right, we are at my indoor worm bin. This is the Vermihut system, and we are going to feed this top tray here. It's now a 2-tray system. I took out the bottom tray, which was the very first tray that I used in this system, and you can see some of this debris is actually me putting in worms from the bottom tray as I'm letting that bottom tray dry out and getting the rest of the worms out so I can use their finished castings. In fact, there's a worm from that bottom tray. So we're just gonna do a feeding and kind of dig around and see how they did on the last feeding. Now, if you watched my last video, I had talked about things heating up. So I was gonna try a kind of an experiment and do a wider swath in the middle. And this time I kind of felt the temperature, and I also felt it heating up. And I took the temperature this time, and in the middle, the temperature was somewhere around 90 degrees to 91 degrees. And that was 2 days after I initiated the feeding. So what I did, in the outer areas were somewhere between 83 to 82 degrees. So, 8 to 9 degree difference. And there were no worms inside the middle feeding. And this newspaper here is really, really flimsy. They're starting to attack it. There's some holes in it, and you can see around the periphery and eating the edges. So anyway, after I mixed everything in, the temperature came down in the whole bin somewhere between 83 and 84, and I had left the lid off too. So I think what I'm gonna have to start doing is, as I feed, mix around the feeding after a couple days. And then also, here you can see the watermelon. They really enjoy that watermelon. And so do the mites. I end up seeing a bunch of mites. I'll just set the watermelon to the side. I think I put 4 in here. So I think what I'll do is I'll feed and then separate out or mix together the food after it's heated up. I guess I could also maybe feed less but more often, which I don't really want to do that. I want to kind of do it once a week, once every week and a half or so. Definitely worms enjoying where those watermelon were. But they just absolutely go bonkers for this watermelon. Just kind of dig around. This is we keep running into this. This is banana stem. There's about, looks like 3 or 4 bananas were attached to that. But lots of worms. You can see them just all over the place, digging around, enjoying themselves. I say enjoy, but I assume they're enjoying themselves. They're pretty active, and they're really breaking down this cardboard. This was 41 days ago that I started this level, and you can just see them just absolutely everywhere in this bin. But they've really, it's amazing how quickly they will take what was like basically 100% cardboard, a little bit of newspaper, and just like a handful of the tray below its castings, just to kind of inoculate. Here's definitely like just a worm ball. But they take that and they really go through it. I think previously I probably wasn't putting enough bedding in, especially with the cocoa coir. I just didn't know. I couldn't tell how much was cocoa coir, how much was castings on that very first tray that I did. But with the cardboard, I can definitely tell. And I've always heard you can never have enough bedding, and everybody's trying to get to finished casting, so I don't like to put extra bedding in, but it really is the truth. You put in that bedding and they just absolutely consume. Probably also help with the heat. Having too much of just the food stuff can get the bin pretty wet and pretty nasty pretty quick, but with bedding, it helps to modulate or moderate, I should say, the moisture level. But you can see I'm just playing around here, but this bin is doing really well. Really happy with it. The moisture level is just perfect. I don't feel any overly moist areas or clumping or that kind of thing. I find the Vermihut it's really hard to screw up the moisture level, especially in that top bin, because it drains. Now I do leave the lid off to help kind of dry it up a little bit. But when I say it helps with the moisture, it makes sure that you're not like absolutely flooding your worms. I do like to leave the lid off to kind of dry things out a little bit on the top and to aerate. But yeah, this bin is doing fantastic. I mean, here's just an example of what I'm finding when I dig around. Just absolutely tons of worms. Started this thing with 2,000. So let me just dig this edge out. I'm finding a ton of worms. I'll dig this edge out, and this is where I'm gonna feed. I think I'm gonna bury these watermelon, let them be part of the feeding. Oops. Yeah, just a great bin. Active bin doing its job. But yeah, we'll make this the feeding area down here. It's also amazing how the bedding in the whole bin just kind of shrinks as they consume everything. You think you got a really high bin, oh, it's almost gonna be time to go to the next tray, and you open the lid and it's depressed. All right, so we're gonna add some more bedding. And actually I wanted to add some paper towel rolls. This one in particular is pretty hefty. Put that guy in there. Maybe a toilet paper roll or two. I like to see how those go. Usually they're smashed down and really moist after I've fed. And we'll add some of this shredded kale and chard and strawberries from our juicer. And then next, some strawberries, which they love, apple core, more apple core, carrot top from the garden. Good hodgepodge. I have a ton of banana peels that I just cut up. Here's some carrot tops from the garden. And I do have a lot of strawberries, so I think they're gonna get a good amount of strawberries here. I keep this in this Tupperware and just leave it in my freezer, and then I'll take it out of the freezer, let it thaw out just a bit before I put it in here. Or like I did today, and take it out the night before, and it's just a big old mushy mess. I'm just gonna give them the whole thing. Fairly large feeding. I'll definitely have to come in here in a couple days and just kind of check the temperature, but having it on the side instead of in the middle where I normally feed, maybe it can dissipate some of the heat out the side, and they have more of a gradient going backwards for temperature if they don't want to be near that 90-degree heat that ends up occurring because of all this food and stuff that I'm adding in here. So there's the coffee grounds. Here's the grit, just eggshells pulverized. And that will about do it for the feeding. If you like the video, I appreciate a thumbs up. I'm just gonna bury this stuff here and we'll call it a feeding. And it's gonna, I knew I was gonna do that. I totally forgot to put the watermelon in, but I'll just put them along the center, maybe over the top. But I'm gonna need to get this down a little bit just so I can fit the lid on. And they love to go up in that lid. I'll take that lid off and they'll be crawling all around the top of it. Just worms like to go wherever they wanna go. This guy trying to escape. Speaking of escape, I really have no issues with escapees. They probably stick their heads out the little holes or to the side and they're immediately like, oh, it is not hospitable out there compared to what I got here. But anybody looking to buy a Vermihut or wondering about having their bin indoors, no issues. And even if they do escape, they're not gonna get more than an inch or two away because they dry out immediately. And I haven't had any issues with my worm bins. Well, I should say with this worm bin. My very first attempt about a year ago was a complete failure. I just got some bait shop worms and put them in shreddings for my mailings, and that did not work out. I couldn't figure out the water level, the food, any of that kind of good stuff. I think I just overdid everything. But this Vermihut definitely gave me the confidence to figure it all out. You really can't screw things up with something like this. So that will do it. I hope everybody has a great day. We will check in on the next feeding and we'll go from there. All right, everybody, take care.